It's 5 p.m. across India. I am Tanvi Taneja. Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We'll bring you the day's big stories from across India and the world. With me today from London is my colleague, Ollie Barrett. Good afternoon, Ollie.
Hello there, Tanvi. It's 12:30 p.m. here in the UK, 1:30 p.m. across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, it's actually 11:30 a.m. in the UK. Forgive me for that. A last-minute deal at COP28. What next for Rishi Sunak's Rwanda migration plan? And a new premier is sworn in Poland. First, the headlines.
COP28 summit approves deal on transition away from fossil fuels. Event chief calls it historic. Tripling renewable energy and doubling energy efficiency picks momentum. India joins 153 nations in support at the UNGA demanding a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza, as 10 nations oppose the resolution while 23 others abstain. UK government says it is open to amending the legislation on Rwanda deportation scheme after the bill passes a critical vote in the House of Commons. And Chinese President Xi Jinping wraps up his two-day visit to Vietnam. Beijing, Hanoi hail the upgrade of ties. Deals announced on railways, telecoms. So after hours of negotiations at the COP28 summit, there was finally something to share. COP28 President Sultan Al Jaber hailed a climate deal approved by almost 200 countries on Wednesday as a historic package of measures which offered a robust plan to keep the target of 1.5 degrees Celsius of global warming within reach.
The COP28 Climate Summit approved a deal that would, for the first time, push nations to transition away from fossil fuels to avert the worst effects of climate change on Wednesday. Representatives from nearly 200 countries agreed to begin reducing global consumption of fossil fuels to avert the worst impacts of climate change in Dubai. The COP28 presidency released a proposed text of a final climate draft that calls on nations to shift away from fossil fuels in energy systems in a just, systematic and fair manner to achieve the net zero goals by 2050. To combat climate change, 5 key measures have been outlined. A just transition away from fossil fuels by 2050, prioritizing zero and low emission technologies like renewables and nuclear, phasing out inefficient fossil fuel subsidies, and accelerating the phase down of coal power and rapidly deploying clean transportation solutions. These actions aim to significantly reduce emissions across energy systems and transportation, paving the way for a sustainable future. They also aim to align with the temperature goals of the Paris Agreement and urgently address the need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from fossil fuels to mitigate climate change.
We might well be on the verge of something that is truly consequential, but we are there to find out.
There are things that we like, things that we do not like so much, but we identify things coming from everybody and a clear message on strong commitment towards 1.5 orientating, providing the grounds for keep on going.
This is what we need. This is what the world needs. Not only does the text say that, it also says what to put instead, which is renewable energy, so a tripling of renewable energy.
The proposal underscores the critical role of multilateralism and international cooperation in addressing global challenges, particularly in the context of the Paris Agreement's implementation. While acknowledging progress in mitigation, adaptation and means of implementation and support, it highlights that parties collectively are not on track to achieve the Paris Agreement's long-term goals. Gautam Roy, DD India.
Updates now on the Israel-Hamas conflict. India voted in favour of a draft resolution in the United Nations General Assembly that demanded an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas conflict, as well as the unconditional release of all hostages. The 193-member UNGA adopted the draft resolution introduced by Egypt at an emergency special session on Tuesday. The resolution was adopted with 153 votes in favour. 23 nations in abstinence, and 10 votes against the text.
Civilians must be protected, consistent with international humanitarian law. In addition, we support the release of all hostages immediately and unconditionally.
India, which voted in favour of the resolution, said that international humanitarian law must be observed in all circumstances.
Our challenge in this extraordinarily difficult time is to strike the right balance. The gravity and complexity of what the international community faces is underlined by the Secretary-General invoking Article 99 of the Charter of the United Nations. We therefore welcome the fact that the international community has been able to find a common ground to address the multiple challenges facing the region right now.
Israeli army claimed on Wednesday that tens of its soldiers were killed while fighting continues in Gaza. The casualties include a colonel who led a regiment. Over 114 Israeli soldiers have been killed since Gaza ground operations began on 20th of October. The Israeli army on Wednesday also released footage which showed ground and aerial offensives on Gaza. Body camera videos showed what was said to be Israeli troops engaged in operations on the ground. And indeed, India's Sarah Coates joins us live from Tel Aviv now. Sarah, we've had this overwhelming support to the UNGA vote demanding a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. What has been Israel's reaction to this?
Hi there, Tanvi. Well, look, a furious reaction from Israel's UN representative Gilad Erdan. After that vote, he turned to members and said, "You want a real ceasefire." He then held up a sign which read, "For a ceasefire deal," and then there's a phone number. Now, that phone number appears to be a phone number for the head of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, Yahya Sinwar, and he is the man that is believed to be the mastermind behind these October 7 attacks down in southern Israel. But look, in terms of the reaction here on the ground in Israel, it's not really been spoken about too widely today. What people believe here is that this ground operation should continue for as long as it takes for the military to dismantle Hamas, saying that the status quo must change and that atrocities like October 7 must never happen again. So that's the general reaction, Tanvi, here on the ground. Not really too much, as people really expected this. And of course, that was a non-binding vote.
Sarah, what more do we know about the reported flooding of tunnels in the Gaza Strip?
Well, look, we're still not hearing anything from Israeli officials about these reports in US media, Tanvi. But look, there are processes that are apparently being explored right now in terms of flooding these tunnels underneath the Gaza Strip. It's known as a metro. And they apparently run for hundreds and hundreds of kilometres right underneath the strip. Now, these reports in US media have been quoting unnamed US officials as saying that they have been briefed, adding it is a process that could take weeks. Now, over the last few weeks, there have been pictures circulating, both satellite images and also images that were released by the IDF. The satellite pics, they show large pipes on a beach in Gaza, while the ones that the IDF released show soldiers with large pumps in northern parts of the Gaza Strip. So look, this has certainly been something that's been spoken about in Israeli media and globally over these last few weeks, that Israel may use this tactic to try and flush out these Hamas fighters. But of course, there is a lot of concern given that there's more than 100 hostages still being held in the Gaza Strip. And according to testimony from some of these people that have already been released, they were apparently led through, quote, a spider's web full of tunnels underneath the Gaza Strip. So it certainly appears that some hostages may still be being held down there. And of course, their families are extremely worried.
Indeed. Sarah Coates there reporting to us from Tel Aviv. Thank you, Sarah. On to Europe now. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak won a crucial vote last night on an emergency bill to revive his plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda. My colleague Ollie Barrett is in London. He gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Ollie, has Sunak won this crucial vote, or can there be further rebellions by the MPs?
It's not over yet, Tanvi. British Home Secretary James Cleverly is suggesting that the government is open to revisiting the wording of the controversial bill that would see asylum seekers sent to Rwanda. The bill passed its first vote in Parliament on Tuesday, aiming to circumvent concerns that led the Supreme Court to declare the policy illegal last month. DD India's Julia Chapman reports from London.
Despite concerns from different sides of the ruling Conservative Party, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak was able to get his new Rwanda bill past the first hurdle. But the second will prove more challenging. The bill provides legal backing for ministers to ignore injunctions from the European Court of Human Rights. But in its current form, it does allow individual asylum seekers to challenge their deportations to Rwanda. Right-wing Conservative MPs don't think it's tough enough and want to see the language strengthened. 29 of them abstained from Tuesday night's vote, defying an order that they vote with the government. More moderate voices in the party who did vote for the bill did so on the basis that the wording does not change. On Wednesday, the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, the country's Interior Minister, said he will speak to critics and work to better understand their thinking on this bill. But he rejected the idea that the bill should be struck down altogether rather than amended. Another vote will be held in January. Until then, Rishi Sunak faces a challenging few weeks as he tries to bridge the diverse factions of his party. Julia Chapman in London, reporting for DD India.
Staying in the UK, and the economy here shrank unexpectedly in October as households and businesses came under growing pressure amid the cost of living crisis, raising the chances of a recession for Britain. According to official data, the UK's GDP fell 0.3% from September. This was the first time since July that GDP had shrunk on a month-by-month basis. Pound sterling also emerged as the worst-performing major currency against the US dollar on Wednesday. US President Joe Biden has urged Congress to approve billions of dollars for Ukraine, warning that not doing so would be a Christmas present for Russia's President Vladimir Putin. Biden met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House on Tuesday amid a funding fight which has seen Republicans refuse to support extra assistance for Kiev. DD India's Nick Harper reports from Washington.
US President Joe Biden used his remarks in the Oval Office and in the subsequent press conference to attack Republicans who are blocking new aid to Ukraine. He argued that Russia would be emboldened by the deadlock on Capitol Hill, adding history will judge harshly those who turn their back on freedom's cause. At issue, Conservative Republican lawmakers demand to allocate significant funding to strengthen security at the US-Mexico border. Without that, they say they're unwilling to support new funding for Ukraine. Biden noted that Russian TV had celebrated the Senate's failure last week to pass a bill, the television host pointing out it was good for Russia. But with US lawmakers leaving Washington at the end of this week for the holidays and not returning until the new year, there's a race on to pass new legislation and new funding as soon as possible.
Ukraine is gradually becoming less dependent on aid, and we are moving to the right direction, and I want to discuss with the President how to strengthen it, especially enhancing our air defense and ability to destroy Russia's logistics. Our goals for 24 are clear: take away Russia's superiority and disrupt their offensive operations.
Biden urged Congress to approve the money this week, saying if they didn't, they'd be giving Putin the greatest Christmas gift they could possibly give him. Meanwhile, the US Treasury announced new sanctions on more than 150 individuals and entities that the US says is allegedly helping Russia's military. The US says that those who've been blacklisted have supplied technology, tools and equipment to help Moscow in its fight against Kiev. One small win, Zelensky leaves Washington with an additional $200 million, money Congress has already approved and that Biden is now releasing to Kiev. But it's nowhere near the more than $60 billion that Biden had asked Congress to approve. Nick Harper in Washington, reporting for DD India.
Well, after meeting with the US President, Volodymyr Zelensky stressed that his country will continue the counterattacks against Russia, regardless of funding from the United States.
Meeting's been, I think,
it's not about financing, it's about the morality. The biggest problem when you don't support Ukraine, the people on the front line, families which are waiting for their heroes at home, that they think that the United States doesn't support Ukraine and that Ukraine is alone. Yes, defending our common values for United States and Europe, that's the problem. To kick our morality, of course, people are afraid to be again alone. But you have to know that even if we will be alone, we will stand and fight.
Russia fired 10 ballistic missiles at Kiev during the early hours of Wednesday local time. The attack left 53 people injured, including 6 children, devastated homes and extensively damaged a children's hospital. 18 people have been hospitalized due to injuries caused by falling debris. This was Russia's second missile assault on Kiev this week. Ahead of a key European leaders summit later this week, EU chief Ursula von der Leyen has called on the bloc to continue supporting Ukraine in its conflict against Russia. Von der Leyen says joining the European Union would be Ukraine's ultimate victory. Hungary has opposed granting Ukraine more financial aid for now and has threatened to veto plans to advance Kiev's EU membership bid.
As the war drags on, we must prove what it means to support Ukraine for as long as it takes. Ukraine is not only fighting against the invader, but for Europe. And joining our family will be Ukraine's ultimate victory. And for this, we have a decisive role to play. Staff of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau.
Poland's president has sworn Donald Tusk in as the country's new prime minister, marking a shift from a right-wing populist government. Tusk, who has already served as premier before, has set a pro-European Union vision for Poland and has pledged strong support for Ukraine. He's expected to travel to Brussels on Thursday to participate in the bloc's summit with fellow EU leaders. China and Vietnam seem to have moved a little closer diplomatically as a result of President Xi Jinping's two-day state visit to Hanoi that has just wrapped up. The two countries have agreed to build trust and cooperate on dozens of issues, from 5G telecom technology to shared naval patrols in the Gulf of Tonkin. DD India's Andrew Wood reports from Hong Kong.
Well, I think China's been worried that Vietnam has been drifting away, that the relations between the two communist countries had been weakening, especially as Vietnam over the past couple of years has grown closer to its former enemies of Japan and America. And remember, just 3 months ago, President Joe Biden was visiting Vietnam, and there was a lot more talk of cooperation. China probably hasn't done itself any favors by asserting its rights. It says it owns pretty much all of the South China Sea, and well, that cuts into the territorial waters of Vietnam as well. Nevertheless, the two countries' economies are, as a result of some of the agreements that have been signed, are going to be integrated closer together. Better rail links. China and Vietnam are going to be cooperating on lots of digital initiatives, including 5G telephones and so on. The key thing now is to make this relationship work. Vietnam has been very good at this bamboo diplomacy, as it's called, namely trying to keep America and Japan and other big democracies, keep good relations with them, whilst at the same time making sure it has good relations with China as well. Remember, China and Vietnam actually fought a war back in 1979. China invaded Vietnam, But the Vietnamese actually managed to defeat the Chinese army. And that was the last time the Chinese army actually fought in such a conflict, fought in a war. So, if Vietnam can continue with the bamboo diplomacy, then all should be good. Remember, actually, Vietnam is also benefiting quite a bit at the moment from China's troubles. Namely, a lot more companies and countries are suspicious of China's motives and are trying to decouple and de-risk and withdrawing their investments from China. And they're spending that money investing in factories and so on in Vietnam instead. In Hong Kong, I'm Andrew Wood, reporting for DD India.
Vietnam very busy on the diplomatic front at the moment. Tanvi, back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Ollie. Ollie Barrett joining us from our London bureau. You're watching DD India Global, still to come on the show. A major security breach witnessed in India's parliament on the 22nd anniversary of a deadly attack on the complex. A Pakistani court indicts former Premier Imran Khan for leaking state secrets, dimming his chances of contesting next year's elections. We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter.
We don't just present facts. We demystify complex social, political and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, D.C.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times. Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. Next news about the GPay summit that kick-started in New Delhi yesterday. So the Global AI, Artificial Intelligence Expo, is underway at the Bharat Mandapam on the sidelines of the Global Partnership on AI GPay Summit. DD India correspondent Shubhendu Ghosh met a unique startup at the expo. Immersive AI is on a mission to immortalize humans by harnessing the power of advanced artificial intelligence. DD India's Shubhendu Ghosh spoke with the founders of Inverse AI.
Artificial intelligence has the power to transform the world, but it cannot make people immortal. But that's a question that a very special AI startup called Inverse AI is trying to answer. I have with me the young founders of this enterprise. When I say young, I mean very young. 9-year-old twins, Anay and Abir Ramakrishna, are with us. Tell us about what your AI enterprise does.
I'm Abir, and here's my co-founder and twin brother, Anay. We lost our grandmother when we were just one, and our maternal grandfather, who was a doctor, succumbed to COVID. Life is finite. Every one of us has to die one day. Imagine if we could immortalize our loved ones by creating their digital avatar and having them around us whenever we miss them.
How long did it take you to make this enterprise? I also see digital avatars of Swami Vivekananda and other great personalities. What is that all about?
So basically, this is about, we took some few months about making this, and it's there in App Store. We have 50+ avatars. Few of them is Nikola Tesla, Edison, and Krishna, Saptarishis.
Anay, I learned that Prime Minister Narendra Modi also met you when he visited this expo. How was meeting the Prime Minister?
It was an experience that our beloved, loving Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji met us and hugged me, and it was nice meeting and talking about Bharat AI, Bharat LM and Bharat GPT, which we are making.
So that was the young founders of Inverse AI talking about their innovation. They are one of the many AI solutions on display at GPay Expo in New Delhi. With camera person Sumit Dhiman, Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India at Bharat Mandapam.
That's the future of artificial intelligence there, and of course the future of India. Bright kids, Abir and Amir. The deadly terror attack on Indian Parliament 22 years ago shook the country. In the tragic incident, 9 people were killed and 18 were injured, including 6 Delhi policemen and 2 Parliament security officials. India's Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla on Wednesday led the nation in paying tributes to those who laid down their lives in the 2001 terror attack. On day 8 of the winter session in India's parliament, a visitor jumped into the chambers of the lower house, Lok Sabha, from the gallery and reportedly hurled gas-emitting objects. Later, he was detained by the police. Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla told members that investigations had found that the smoke released by the man was ordinary smoke just to cause sensation. Various events are taking place across India as part of the Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra. This initiative seeks to apprise citizens of government initiatives, country's progress since India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi took office. The Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra has reached far-flung areas of Jammu and Kashmir's Rajouri district. A large number of villagers were apprised with India's government schemes, and a Meri Kahani, Meri Zubani, a large number of people participated and shared their stories. An Indian solar energy enterprise, U Solar Clean Energy Solutions, has backed the contract to build hybrid recycled power plants in Sri Lanka's northern Jaffna district. Sri Lankan Minister for Mass Media, Bandula Gunawardena, said the decision to award the contract to the Indian firm was taken in a cabinet meeting held on Monday. He added that the decision followed a competitive bidding process. The project will be carried out under an Indian grant of $11 million. The MOU for the project was signed during the visit of Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar last year. And next we take a look at other stories making news around the world. 23 people were killed in Indonesia's Merapi volcano eruption last week, spewing volcanic ash as high as 500 to 600 meters. Merapi is one of the most active volcanoes in Indonesia, origin of more than 100 active volcanoes. Former Prime Minister of Pakistan pleaded not guilty to the charges of leaking state secrets. It is the second time Imran Khan has been indicted on the same charges after a superior court struck down an earlier indictment saying the correct procedure had not been followed. And 2-time Emmy-winning actor Andre Braugher, star of the television comedy series Brooklyn Nine-Nine, passed away after a brief illness. Braugher was known for his portrayal of the movie detective Frank Pembleton in 1998, but it was his performance in hit comedy series Brooklyn Nine-Nine that made him famous. And Chicago's Museum of Science and Industry is showcasing diverse holiday traditions with the Christmas Around the World exhibit. The attractions include a 4-story, 50-foot-tall grand tree surrounded by over 50 trees representing holiday traditions from cultures around the globe. So with those Christmas festivities, it's a wrap in this edition of DD India Global. Join us for another edition of the show at 7:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter and Instagram at DD India Live. You can also find us online at ddindia.co.in. We will be back with more news as it breaks air on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja. From my entire team in New Delhi, thank you for watching. Namaskar.